Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. Shadows of the Lost. Episode 10. Chapter 65. Alejandro Alderien called me, but it was hard to keep myself together when my woman was chained up down beneath these very packed grounds. Call for a meeting in an hour's time. Have the Witchson call and wire the alphas involved. It's time we took him down. What's the count at? 432. Darien replied after checking his phone. I nodded. Spread farther out if we need to, no one rests until we have what we need. I ordered coldly before walking away from him, no longer able to control my aura that was swirling around me in waves of darkness. He has hurt my family, repeatedly, but to try to use my own mate against me. The urge to rip him apart piece by piece sounded very enticing. I was about to go to my office at headquarters, but I didn't think staying in one room for an hour was going to help. So instead, I decided to go for a walk around the pack instead, and maybe for a run. A pack that had gone from what looked like more of a military camp to a full-out pack with pups and families. A group of young boys in their teens walked past, laughing and talking, not even knowing the severity of life around them, although they went silent upon seeing me. Alpha. They lowered their heads, clearly realizing I was annoyed off. I frowned, looking at the boy in the middle, with piercing brown eyes and a tumble of dirty blonde hair. Fred's kid. One I had never mentioned to anyone, although I knew a few may make the link as he looked like the spitting image of him. I had often been tempted to speak to his mother, but I had always decided against it. Can I help you, Alpha? He asked with a warm smile. That was something different from Fred, who had always been quiet and moody. No, he gave me a small polite smile and nodded. None of you has a fag on you, do you? They exchanged looks wondering if it was a trick question before they shook their heads. We aren't 18 yet, one of them said. Yet? I'm sure you all get up to crap. I said, making a few of them look guilty. Yeah, I thought so. But we don't have cigarettes, sorry. I nodded, motioning them to go as I walked off, leaving Thurn behind and frowning deeply. Azura was his half-sister, and I was sure the day would come when I would have to share that truth, but for now, I didn't plan on delving into it. I reached into my pocket, only to frown when I realized they were empty. I needed a cigarette and there was nowhere I could grab one. I didn't want to ask anyone to bring me a pack either, because I wanted to be alone. Kiera. Chained and alone. I couldn't have anyone watch her because she could use her command on them. At least the silver in her cuffs cut the mind link from her. Isolating her. I sighed as I mind-linked Callum and explained the situation to him. Don't worry, Alpha, I will look into drugging her so she is unconscious and can't harm herself. Do that. I cut the link and entered the trees. I removed my sweatpants and shifted, I needed a run to clear my head. Elijah Scarlet wrapped her arms around my neck from behind. Hey, she whispered. I stroked her arms, sighing heavily. What's on your mind? You know, with Kiera losing control, Alejandro's plan to leak false information has gone out the window. I said, turning and looking into her beautiful sage green eyes. Don't worry, I'm sure we'll sort this out. The other night he mentioned he wanted one of us to stay here. Elijah. Will you stay? Always a beauty, always strong, and always a fearless alpha, but I didn't want to risk her. Kitten, I don't want you to be out there on the battlefield when I'm here. She pressed a finger to my lips and shook her head. I heal faster. I need to be there. You know we need someone powerful here too. That's you. To look after the pups and Kiara. She replied, frowning softly. I sighed. You really haven't changed. As hot, tight, and stubborn as that first day I realized I was in love with you. I said, enjoying the way her heart skipped a beat. And although you are super possessive, you have always let me do what I needed to. Never treated me as anything lesser. We're equal. Like you once said, and I have to admit it is probably one of the hottest things you have ever said, I may not have a D*, but I'm a king. She smiled, finishing the sentence, as we thought back to that moment from long ago. Yeah, and you were right. I smirked, reaching behind me and pulling her into my arms, inhaling her scent as I buried my nose in her neck. So will you let me go? I tilted my head, squeezing her as she straddled me. You know if anything happens to you. She placed a finger on my lips and smiled slightly. We live together, and we will die together. I know. She whispered. Yeah, a promise we made, but we both knew that if it came to that, we couldn't abandon Azura. Neither of us had to say it out loud, our eyes spoke what our lips were unable to. If something was to happen, the other would have to live on for her. Even if only until she was ready to spread her wings and fly. She hugged me tightly, her heart racing. I held her just as tight. Scarlet may be an alpha, heck a king, but she too had her fears and worries, yet she continued to be brave for everyone else. Earlier when Kiara had begun to lose herself and was begging to be locked away, it was Scarlet who had given the command to listen to Kiara and lock her up. A decision we all weren't able to make. Her voice had been strong, but I had felt her agony and pain leaking through the bond as she remained in control for those around us. My phone beeped and we both moved back, realizing it was time for the meeting. I love you, sweetheart. I said quietly, giving her my best smirk. One that she fell for back in the day. She rolled her eyes. I guess I love you too. Despite her airy tone, she gripped my face and kissed me passionately, sending off explosions of pleasure through us both. Alejandro, it was an hour later, and we were still in the middle of the meeting. We had several people on video call, and I had finished outlining the plan. The extra batch of people sent to gather blood from farther out would hopefully speed up the process and get us the needed amount faster. There's 5 groups being made: the decoy, the defense, the infiltration, extra backup force, and of course, the main group, I said, tapping the tabletop screen where I had a battle plan pulled up. Elijah, who's staying behind from you too? I am. He replied instantly. I frowned, but I had a feeling he would be. Scarlet had been adamant that she was going to go to battle when I had mentioned I wanted either or both to stay behind. I gave a curt nod, trying to ignore the pain in my body. Whatever this was draining, but my body was continuing to fight against it. Rayhana and Elijah. You two are staying here. My 2 betas will also be staying behind. That is the defense for the pack. I stated. Nicholson, you will take charge of Blood Moon, and Chris, you will handle Black Storm if needed. I said as Rayhan nodded. Although we shouldn't be gone for too long, we needed to make sure everything was in place. I continued explaining everything until I was sure everything was covered. Any questions? I asked. The screen crackled before another window popped up and a smirking Leo appeared. You really need to work on your online security, that took me max 20 minutes to hack into. Yeah, well, not everyone is a computer whiz. What do you want? I asked, frowning as Marcel's frown deepened. Leo. This is not a joke. He growled. I motioned for him to leave it. I want in. I heard that we'll be heading out literally right after my birthday, meaning I'd have shifted by then. He smirked. I didn't need anyone to tell me that he was thrilled about his shift, but then again, who wouldn't be? And why would you want to come on such a risky mission? I asked, very aware of all the alphas on screen and everyone in the room watching us. He shrugged, sitting back and lighting a cigarette. You know Dad isn't the toughest guy around. I'm just going to be there to make sure he comes back in one piece. He said, but his eyes were ice cold. Although his words seemed normal enough, making a few alphas nod as if understanding his point and smiling at how protective he seemed of his father, I understood the underlying meaning. It was obvious he thought I'd let Marcel die, or that I would put him in the line of fire and use him for collateral. That wasn't true. I didn't want anyone to lose their lives, and I would protect Marcel if the need arose. I'll let you come, but this is a team battle. Are you sure you will get along with everyone on the team? If you try anything or come in the way, I won't. I'll make sure to steer clear of everyone's way. He cut in and I nodded, not missing Rayhan's frown from the corner of my eye. And stop hacking the system. I growled. He raised an eyebrow. I'll give you some tips on how to strengthen this crap if you come out of this battle alive. He said, shrugging, making Maria and Scarlet frown. I turned back to the group. It is going to be risky. Lives will be lost, but I promise you all I will do my best to make sure they are minimum. I understand that, Alpha. I do have a concern though. Are you sure killing this enemy with just a special blade will be enough? Jacob, an Alpha from up north, asked. I nodded, trying not to glance at Janina or Magdalene. It's no simple weapon, it will do the job. I said before looking around at everyone. I have one request. As always, I have given the option for those who want out or do not want to participate. All of you have offered to help and I'm grateful for it. However, don't force your people, only those who are willing should come forward. I appreciate that, Alpha King, but they are our pack members. They will obey. They will, but if their heart isn't in it, then there's no power behind that warrior. A time may come where every man and woman will have to stand in battle whether they like it or not, but right now, we have the power to give them the choice. I said quietly. I saw Leo frown. He probably didn't believe me, but I meant it. We are with you, King Alejandro. One by one, they all followed suit, and the weight of the situation cast a somber feeling across the room. This battle may be personal for you, Alpha Alejandro, but the Queen, Lunadalsanra, and Dante are important to us all. Besides, by letting this thing do as he wishes, he will only harm more and more of our kind. He needs to be stopped anyway. Damon said seriously. I glanced at him and nodded. It was true, he wanted Dante, and although what exactly he wanted with him was still a mystery, I was certain we'd find out one way or another. Rayhan's phone rang, and everyone turned their attention to him. He cut the call, looking down at the screen, before a small smirk crossed his lips. Has the blood count risen? I asked through the link. He gave me a nod, and I smirked. Perfect. The taste of blood filled my mouth once again, but I swallowed it. I needed to remain strong for my people and for my family. We got this, Elijah said, and I glanced up sharply. Our eyes met, and I nodded. Yeah, we did. Maria, 4 days had passed since the meeting and we were getting ever closer to the blood count, which meant the time to leave would be soon. It had been 4 days since Kiera had lost control and was now being kept unconscious. Seeing her lying there on a bed of silver with chains holding her down was painful. I had wanted to talk to her before I left, one final time, to ask her to take care of my grandchildren, to take the place of that grandmother figure for them that I no longer would be able to fulfill, but I didn't have the luxury to bid her goodbye. I now stood outside Rayhana's bedroom, hesitating. I had told her I had wanted a word, so she was expecting me, but I was feeling a little uncertain. Scared even. I swallowed hard, trying to be strong. How do I tell my daughter that I wasn't coming back? Auntie Maria, come in. Chris said, opening the door and flashing me a smirk. I smiled, and entered their bedroom, my heart pounding, which made Chris look at me suspiciously. You all right? He asked. Of course I am. I replied smoothly, walking over to the travel cot where Tatum was fast asleep, my little prince. Mom. Rayhana said, coming out of the adjoining bathroom in a silk nightgown. Could you close the door please, Chris? I asked, as he was still standing there. He closed it slowly, exchanging looks with Rayhana, who came over to me and felt my forehead. Your heart's racing, Mom. She murmured, concerned. I sat on the edge of the bed, pulling her down beside me. I wanted to talk to you both about something. I started, taking her hands. Promise me you both will hear me out before saying anything, and what I speak of stays in this room. I promise. Rayhana said, brushing it off. No, Rayhana, take an oath on Tatum. Mom. You're asking for an oath, what is going on? You won't know until you take the oath. I said pointedly. She rolled her eyes as Chris smirked. I take an oath on RI. You have my word, I won't repeat anything to anyone. He said, placing a hand on his heart. I swear on Tatum's life. Rayhana said, shaking her head. Happy? Yes. I said quietly, looking at my son-in-law. I will need him to be here for Rayhana. Mom? Hello? You can tell us, you are acting really weird. She felt my forehead again, looking confused. Here it goes. Taking a deep breath, I closed my eyes for a moment, giving Rayhana's hand a gentle squeeze. It's about the upcoming battle. I said softly. Oh Mom, I wish you didn't have to go. Don't worry, you will be okay, Uncle Al won't let anything happen to you. Rayhana said, smiling at me. I nodded. I know he won't, but there is a price to pay for taking a demon's life. I began, my heart thundering as Rayhana's smile vanished, replaced with a frown. A life. The one who stabs him with the dagger will die. Shit. Is Uncle planning? I said, hear me out, ya Habibti. I scolded as Chris stood there, watching me sharply with his piercing eyes. Okay, but Uncle can't. He was planning to, but the kids are still so young, Kiara is so young, they have their entire life ahead. I explained, and Rayhana nodded. And well, I want to return to him. I finished softly, and for the first time, I looked into her eyes. She frowned, trying to understand before her eyes widened, her heart thundering as she stared at me, realization burning in her brown orbs. Chris muttered. Her eyes began filling with tears and I knew I needed to say what I had to before I couldn't hold myself together any longer. Every day that passes feels like a burden upon my soul. Life is empty. I felt guilty, I was their mother, I was meant to continue going for them. I'm sorry, I know you must think I'm such a coward for leaving all of you. I truly miss him. She shook her head, her lips trembling as she squeezed my hand tightly. You and Rayhan have your lives before you, your mates, your children, and I think I can leave you now. I cupped her face as her lip quivered and for a moment it felt like a 15-year-old Rayhana was before me. May I return to my mate? Those were the words that broke the dam on her tears, and she lowered her head. You will leave us? What about our little baby? He or she will never get to meet you. She whispered, placing her free hand on her stomach. My children won't have any grandparents. I know, ya Habibti, but Alejandro cannot do this or anyone else, it isn't fair. I want to go, and this is my chance. You will never be alone. You will have Alejandro, Kiara, Dulsanra, Rayhan. Does Rayhan know? She asked, brushing her tears away angrily. No, and I don't plan to tell him. I am leaving a small video for him and for Kiara. I said softly, brushing her tears away as she shook her head. Goddess, there has to be another way. She cried in frustration. Baby! Chris said, as she stood up. He pulled her into his arms forcefully. She said, she's tired. She can't go. Rayhana snapped, despite the tears running down her cheeks. No. Her loud shout disturbed Tatum. I stood up as he started crying and took him from the cot. Hugging him tightly, my own tears threatening to fall, I turned away. I will not show my weakness. Please Rayhana, living without your mate is like living when your inside is empty. And what of us? Don't we make you happy? Come live with us if you feel alone at home. Please, Mom, don't do this. She sobbed. She came over, grabbing my shoulders as I rocked the child in my arms. You all do, but I cannot explain it. Tell me Rayhana, can you imagine life without Chris? I asked quietly. She looked over my shoulder, her eyes filling with pain. A life where your other half is gone? Waking every day with the absence of his smile, touch, and presence? Everywhere I walk, I see memories that we once shared. I need him, Rayhana. Please don't make this harder for me. Let me go. Mom, She hugged me, the little prince between us staring up at us as he watched us curiously. Our foreheads were pressed together and a few tears escaped me despite my greatest effort, making Tatum giggle as he clapped, staring up at us. How did Uncle even agree? She whispered, between her sobs. He saw my pain. I replied, taking a deep, shuddering breath. He didn't want to, but I begged him. Rayhan is going to kill. She said, shaking her head. And that is why I want you to make sure he sees this video. I reached into the pocket of my skirt and held out a small drive. Make sure he sees it. She nodded, before a fresh wave of tears consumed her. Chris took Tatum from my arms, and I hugged my child, knowing that these moments were coming to an end and the sheer weight that I would no longer have my children in my arms hit me hard. There was indeed a price for everything. I left their room an hour later and made my way to Dulsanra's room. Rayhan was gone for the night, and I was going to spend the night watching over her. She was no longer able to get up from bed, and she spent most of the time sleeping. The curse was taking its toll and we all feared what would happen without Kiara to help ease it a little. Even Rayhana's healing spells did nothing to ease her pain. The Omega, Clara, smiled at me when I entered, holding a sleeping Aaron in her arms. Was he not asleep? I asked quietly. He wanted his mother. She replied, looking older than ever. This Jinn was taking its toll on the entire pack. Pass him to me and get some rest yourself. I told her with a gentle smile. Shall I take Sienna? No, I will have them. I replied, going over to the bed where Sienna was already asleep next to her mother. Okay ma'am, if you need anything, don't hesitate to call. She whispered before leaving the room. I looked at the child in my arms and walking over to the bed I slipped in on the end, placing him down by his sister and laying down next to him. I'll miss you all. I whispered. Was I selfish to leave them? Would Rayhan hate me? I stroked the children's curls and for a moment I remembered when Rayhan and Rayhana were little pups. Raphael would come home late, but he'd always go to kiss them, and if they woke up, he'd just bring them to our room. I'd scold him for ruining their routine. I closed my eyes, letting the tears stream down my cheeks now that I was alone. I looked over at the second daughter I was blessed with. No matter how hurtful the things I said when I first realized that she was a witch were, she still forgave me. She was the best mate I could ever wish for Rayhan. Mama Mari, what's wrong? Her weak voice came. I looked away, wiping my tears. I hadn't realized she had woken up. Nothing, I know it's not nothing. Talk to me. She whispered, her eyelids opening slightly. Our eyes met, and I smiled softly, despite the tears in my eyes. I can't have you telling Rayhan. I whispered. What is it? She asked, worry crossing her face. I shook my head. I loved her, but what if she told Rayhan? Just know that I love you and you are going to get better soon. Thank you. She smiled despite the pain she was in. I love you too. You are the mother I always wished to have. I nodded. I'm glad. I too was blessed by the gods to have gotten another daughter as perfect and strong as you. I reached over and caressed her cheek. She closed her eyes before she opened them again, and this time they were full of sadness. Didn't you say I'll be okay? Why does this sound like a farewell? She whispered. She tried to smile, and I simply shook my head. I'm just having a moment. You will be okay. Absolutely. She nodded and we fell silent. I wasn't sure if she fell asleep, but just as troubled sleep was overcoming me, I heard her speak. Mama Mari. This isn't farewell, is it? But I didn't have the heart to reply. Enrique, I will kill him. My heart was thumping in fear, I was terrified. I had returned to my pack in Puerto Rico, but when Padre found out I was back, he demanded I be brought back to England because he wanted to see me. I hated this place. It was nothing but a nightmare for me. My entire body was hurting me, but Father didn't stop. He kept kicking me. Again and again. I wanted to ask him why he didn't come for me. Didn't he love me? Tell me, you hijo de puta. Tell me. Father screamed. Father. I don't know anything. I coughed as he kicked me again. There is no way he would have let you go without something in return. He hissed. Tell me, what did you tell him? Nothing, Padre, I don't know anything to have told him. I cried out fearfully. Another kick to the head. I had pleaded for the last hour, yet he didn't believe me. He kept hurting me and the memory of how I was always in pain returned to me. But why did it feel so much worse? Will I die? You won't speak? You won't tell me why he let you go? Because he isn't a monster. I shouted. He fell silent and I felt the unease in the room grow. Through the blood and haze of pain, I looked up at my father. A darkness emanated from him, and it filled the room, filling me with fear and dread. Want to see a monster, son? He hissed, his burned skin looking even worse than normal. His eyes were glowing terrifyingly. Father wasn't well. The thing inside of him was killing him and making him angrier. Bring his mother. Mother? No. No. Padre, please. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that. I cried out. I think this is a lesson you need, son. A few days in his hold and you think he's better than me. No, Padre, I swear, he isn't better than you. I never said that. I just said he let me go because he kicked me across the room just as I heard Mother enter. No, Mother, go. Alpha Sebastian, Mother murmured respectfully, looking at Father. The evil look on Father's face was scaring me. Mother's attention fell on me, and her eyes widened in horror. Enrique is back! She cried, breaking away from the two guards who were flanking her and ran towards me. No, Madre, run! I shouted in horror the moment I saw Father raise his hand, and before my very eyes, the blazing fire engulfed Mother's body instantly. A shriek of pain left her lips, her eyes widening in horror as they stared at me. Then Father was behind her, his hand ripping through her chest and tearing her heart out. No! 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 This can't be true! My heart was hurting so much. The smell of blood and burnt skin filled the room. Mother's lifeless body fell to the ground, and I couldn't stop the tears from falling from my eyes. Please don't let this be true. Was this it? I didn't even get to hug her. The way she ran to me when she saw me, it meant that she did care for me, but did her death not affect father? Now that's a monster. Father hissed as he came over to me, kicking me in the stomach once more. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I have always been wrong. No, not maybe, I am wrong. Father is evil. I won't speak, I'll never tell him what I told the Alpha King. I didn't move, I didn't react as he kept kicking me. I just stared at the burned body of my mother lying a few meters away, all I could do was look at it. I didn't even get to say goodbye. I closed my eyes, praying to the goddess, if she really existed, to save me. Did she not love us? Why was she letting this happen to us? Throw him out. I heard father say somewhere far away. Was I dying? I was all alone, no one cared for me. Maybe it was better if I died too. Take him before I kill him. He hissed, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Yes, kill me. I wanted to go to mother. He turned and slammed his foot on my head. Searing pain filled my body and I wondered if this was what death felt like. When your body is in so much pain that you can no longer breathe. Everything was getting darker. I thought I saw father walking away. Stay awake, young master, someone was whispering. I don't want to. Just, please let me die. Darkness was calling me, and I welcomed it happily. Marcel Leo's 18th birthday was finally here, with only an hour to spare. It was something I wanted to celebrate with our entire pack, but he didn't want that. Even though we were in trying times, it was still a special one. I was still concerned as to why he wanted to come on the mission or why Alejandro would agree. Did he trust Leo to behave? I didn't. I was worried he'd mess something up and it would cause more problems, but when I spoke to Alejandro yesterday, he had said Leo was only concerned about me. Looking at the boy who sat there, tapping his foot, earphones in and smoking a cigarette, I felt like I was losing the boy who was once full of innocence and hope. Maybe I had lost him years ago, but seeing him sitting there, so grown. I wondered where the time went. His mother would have loved to be here. Are you just going to stand there? He remarked coldly, glancing up at me. I want to witness my son's first shift. I replied. He didn't respond to that, and I sighed. Leo. It's still not too late to celebrate in the morning. With what? A cake and candles? I'm 18, Dad, not 8. Well, you should do something with your friends at least. Maybe pizza, a movie. Nal, we're going to head down to a strip club tonight. He smirked arrogantly, and I frowned. That's not the best choice. Your memorable 18th and you're going to go spend it at a club. Oh, forsake, I've been to one countless times. If you can't tell, people already think I'm older than I look. He shrugged. You are at the age where you may find your mate. I reminded him, just the thought of it made me think that the poor girl would have a lot to deal with. 6. I don't think I'll find my mate this early. Hopefully, never. He shrugged, unbothered as he glanced at the time. Don't say that. They are a blessing. Or a curse. Leo, why do you want to go on this mission? I asked quietly. He frowned and looked at me sharply, all laziness and attitude vanishing. I already told you, to watch your back, he growled. I don't need a pup to watch out for me. I frowned. Actually, you do, especially when we all know they'll throw you to the devil first. He believed that. He truly believed that. Leo, do you truly believe that I will be alone out there? He stood up, towering slightly over me as he walked towards me, taking out his earpods. You will be, and the most pathetic part is, you don't see it. Actually, you don't see the truth. He scoffed, glancing up at the sky. Yet? Well, even if you're a lame alpha, you're the only family I've got. So, if I have to come watch your back, then I'm coming. As for the rest, I don't say anything. Leo, it's time. His voice was an animalistic growl as a huge surge of power wrapped around him and I almost stepped back. His eyes glowed a dark steel blue, and he grinned before the snapping of bones filled the air. Then there before me was a huge, magnificent wolf. His fur was a light brown, but what awed me was the blue undertones to it. A color that I had never seen before. His aura was emanating off him in waves, and when he raised his head to the moon letting off a mighty menacing growl that oozed of nothing but pure power and dominance, I realized that before me not only stood a strong alpha, but either a mighty ally or a terrifying threat. But it was his next words that planted the seed of fear within me. What's wrong, Dad? Scared? His powerful voice came through the link. His deep steely eyes met mine and I was unable to reply. The boy I had known was gone. In that moment, I made up my mind, unless I ended up dead, I would not give him the position of Alpha. Leo had waited for this moment for years, not only because he wanted his wolf, but because he craved power, and that very thought terrified me. He was now capable of unleashing hell. Alejandro, come back, Rayhan. We only have a couple dozen to go. You need to be here with Dulsanra, even if it's just for a bit. I said quietly through the phone. Yet. His quiet reply came. I want to, but me coming back slows things down. We need to work as fast as possible. He'd been strong, even with each passing day. Dulsanra hadn't woken up in the last 20 hours and we were all getting worried. Her heart was fading and time was running out. Kiera was knocked out in the cells, yet at times I felt the pain and agony through the bond. He was hurting her, trying to awaken her, and it hurt, knowing I was causing her pain too. All right. How long do you think it'll take? I asked. I'm going to say a day at most. I'm getting this done. He replied, his voice dangerously low. Got it. I hung up, dropping into my seat. I was trying to keep my shit together, but the poison was messing me up too. Janina and Elijah were in the room. Everyone was gathering here ready to leave when the time came. Only Leo said he would meet us on the way. He had shifted 2 nights ago and Marcel had said he was a powerful wolf. I expected no less from a Rossi. The conversation from the day before yesterday played in my mind. Why had his words made me uneasy? Flashback 2 days ago, congrats on your shift. Your old man said you're a sight. Maybe. I'm proud of you, I wouldn't have expected anything less from a Rossi. A cold scoff came down the line. Oh yeah? I don't really consider myself one of your kind. My kind? Yeah, the kind I hate. Leo, I know you hate Rayhan, but try to understand what he did was because his mate was tortured, under Endora's command, right? Yet I know, if you forget, I was there. I remember sneaking her medicine and food when I could. Even if she was a witch, she was just another prisoner, like all of us. Then you understand why he did it. Rayhan's mate, Rayhan's mate, Rayhan's mate. I'm getting bored of hearing it. What about the mates of those who were forced to hurt her? Those who suffered from the trauma of being spelled to commit crimes, knowing their families would be killed before their eyes yet still begged not to be forced to hurt her? What about when Rayhan beat those victims, did he not think their innocent mates would also feel the pain? Tell me, King Alejandro, in his revenge he hurt so many innocent people. In fact, 2 of those who were kept prisoner, their mates were pregnant at the time, and 1 almost miscarried. But you all don't care, do you? Because it's your Rayhan. Congratulations, Your Royal Highness, you really are the perfect king. Plus the phone was cut off, leaving me feeling ice cold. End of flashback. Did I feel uneasy because the facts he stated were something I had never considered? Or because I let it happen? It's true, even Marcel had been under Endora's command, to the point he was a mere puppet like most of them, but had we been right to give Rayhan that power? I had given him those files, data I had promised I'd share with no one. Had I made a mistake? Puppets of Endora who had regretted their actions, and above that, their mates suffered. I ran my hand through my hair. It's a shame Dulsanra isn't up to this. Janina sighed. What do you mean? I asked, glad for a distraction from my thoughts. I found out that any kind of demon can kill a jinn without dying. She stated haughtily. Well, we don't have demons walking around now, do we? I growled. Each day closer to ending this shit also meant saying goodbye to Maria, so my mood was getting worse. Elijah frowned as he watched me calculatingly. So Rayhan almost has the entire blood count? At this rate, you can set off in the morning. He said quietly. I nodded. Yeah, I think I'll let everyone know. I said, standing up. Only the most trusted would know of the plans, my warriors were ready to leave at any moment anyway. No, you rest, take it easy, keep your energy up and I'll let them know. He said quietly. Thanks. I said quietly. He left the room, and Janina looked at me. You know, I came here earlier for a reason. She stated. Yeah, I'd hope so because I didn't call you. I still truly dislike your attitude. She snapped as I sat down again. Yeah, I'm not very likable. Any other obvious fact you want to share? She frowned but turned away, crossing her arms. I'm here because I know exactly why the Jinn wants Dante. Do you wish to know? You have been here for a few hours and you are telling me this shit now? What do you want in return? I asked. A smile curled the corners of her lips and she nodded. This time I do want something. We need funds to expand certain areas of our coven, however, we are not as rich as you. You can't just magic yourself into some bank vault or some shit and steal whatever you need. I asked, raising an eyebrow as I lit a cigarette. She narrowed her eyes and glared scathingly at me. We don't steal. She hissed. Fine, I'll give you the funds. Now, why does he want Dante? It's a little ironic actually, but he wants Dante's blood. Your son's blood will give him a solid form to walk the earth in all his power, not just possessing a vessel like he has with his current host. Blood. What were we all high on? Some vampire-like shit? It came down to that for both parties then. So you're saying he isn't fully here? Yet he's that strong. Not exactly. He is here, but he can't retain his form without a vessel, and since he was summoned by an Eskara, they are his only hosts. However, Dante's birth was foreseen centuries ago. I frowned. What was it? What powers did Dante hold that the entire world made him a target? Do you remember what I told you when you first came to me? That the entire world will have their eyes upon him. Yeah, it's why he keeps that amulet on. Yes, that amulet is far more powerful than you think. History says it came from Hecate herself. Yet okay, now tell me, what is this entire prophecy around Dante? She frowned, so impatient as always. Well, he lied. Not only would the entire world have its eyes upon him, but the eyes of the yachts would be on him too. A wave of uneasiness washed over me. What was he? What power did he hold? The prophecy regarding Dante was destroyed by Selene to protect him, and those who knew it were to pass it down but were cursed to not speak of it. I frowned. Is that what happened to the man in Italy? We had thought it was the jinn at work, so then you telling me? Oh, I'll live because I was given this message to pass on when the time came. I may be a witch, but I am also what you may call a prophetess. She pulled up her hair from the nape of her neck, showing me an intricate symbol that seemed to be glowing. I was sent to assist and protect Dante's identity. Although I hated werewolves, we cannot choose our purpose. It was why I became a lone witch. My mind was reeling. How far back had she known? So you knew this shit years back, but didn't think to tell me? The time was not right. It is now, she said icily. It is why I purposely crossed paths with Callum, knowing he'd end up in your pack. He was the one who told you about me. And as a prophetess, or whatever that shit is, you are still asking for money in return. Don't be so stingy. What is he? I asked. Something told me he was far more than what we were thinking. She smiled knowingly before she raised an eyebrow. You really can't think of anything more powerful than a Lycan? Than a blessed wolf, demon, jinn, or a bloodline prince? Really, King Alejandro, is the poison tampering with your brain? I frowned. More powerful than everything we had come across. What being is as strong as a god? I growled, irritated at her roundabout answers. Her smile only grew. Just that. Your son is a miracle on earth. One that Selene has fought to place on this earth, for when the time comes, the world will need him. Your son is not only the future king, not just an alpha, not just a young boy, he is the most powerful being to grace this planet and one that the entire world will bow down to. Your son is a demigod, King Alejandro. A real god. Her words came crashing down on me, and my mind was beyond reeling at the revelation. What the actual? I bet if I was Liam, this would be the part where I would end up passing out, but instead, I sat back in my seat trying to process it all. Dante was. If I didn't see how serious she was, I would have thought this was a joke. He was a demigod. Well, I didn't see that coming. Rayhan, I had returned back to Uncle's pack the day after he had called and told me to come home. I had refused, but I had finally gotten the blood count we needed plus an extra 10 in case some were not viable. I couldn't afford to lose more time. With each passing day my kitten was getting worse. I couldn't just sit back and wait. Seeing her state when I entered our bedroom had made my stomach plummet. The fear and worry I was feeling only worsened. She hadn't woken up since last night. What was the last thing she said? I asked Mom quietly, as I rocked Sienna. Running my other hand through Dulsanra's white hair that I loved as much as the woman they belonged to. The sun shone through the window, illuminating her pale skin. If it wasn't for the veins that covered her, it was as if she was just asleep. She simply said something to me, I'm not sure what time it was. Mom said quietly, trying to keep her face blank, but I could see the emotions and the pain in her eyes. She was trying to remain strong, but it wasn't easy. This entire situation had taken a toll on us all. When are we leaving? I asked Uncle without looking up. Tomorrow. Janina will finish the ritual on the dagger, so it will be ready. He replied coldly. His eyes were on Mom, and I frowned. Was it just me or were those two acting a little tense? I'll go check on the girls. Come on, Aaron. Mom picked him up and carried him out of the room, leaving me and Uncle alone in the room with Dulsanra. What's up with you and Mom? I asked, glancing up at Uncle. Nothing. He answered, running a hand through his hair. But there's something I want to ask Rayhan, and I know now's not the time but, it's been on my mind for a couple of days. What is it? Daddy. Sienna chipped in, reaching up and kissing my cheek. I smiled down at her, her dark grey eyes sparkling. I was glad she was far too young to understand what was happening. I gave her another smile before glancing at Uncle. He sighed and I could tell whatever it was weighing on his mind. It's about the Sangui pack. I've never asked you the extent of what went down back then. Marcel never said anything either. But the other day, when I rang Leo to congratulate him on his shift, he said something that has been on my mind and I can't get it out. He said seriously, his dark eyes boring into mine. I frowned, remembering those who had hurt Dulsanra, feeling anger flare up inside of me at just the thought. What do you want to know? Leo said, you punished those who were under Endora's control and were forced to hurt Del. Those who didn't have any remorse. Yeah, those who were forced to do it and regretted it were let off lightly, however those who didn't seem to care because she was a witch, forced or not, were punished. I still let them live. Dulsanra had suffered so much, and that trauma lingered. What I did was nothing in comparison to what they had done to her. Uncle looked thoughtful, a deep frown on his face. There was a group who were kept in prison for a time, from the group that lived I mean, correct? Yeah, I told you that. I replied, sounding colder than I meant to. The topic got to me, and although I had tried to talk to Leo, the fact he couldn't bring it up with me directly was beginning to irritate me. Of all times, he found now the best time to add stress to Uncle's already heavy workload. Kiera was in the cells too, and I knew it was probably ripping him apart just as much as my feelings about Dulsanra. He made a point which made me think. The ones who were beaten, and those who were also kept in prison, bound by silver, The pain they went through. He said, what about their mates? Did you not think that by punishing those, you were also hurting their innocent counterparts? Uncle's voice was quiet, almost as if he didn't want to say the words out loud, and I froze. No. I hadn't considered that. I was so consumed by my own pain, by the pain Dulsanra had gone through, that I didn't consider anything else. For the first time in the last 6 years, I questioned if I did the right thing, but still. I couldn't have just let them off. I'm not blaming you. Marcel, myself, neither of us said anything either. I'm going to have a word with Marcel too, because didn't he consider this shit? I wasn't there, we all may have stuck up, but I know shit happens and what Del went through, we would all kill for our mates. I get that. But once this Jin is taken care of, I do want you and Leo to have a sit down. It's high time we talked this shit out. Properly. I didn't reply for a moment, running my fingers through Sienna's soft curls. She was hurning, it reminded me of a cat. I nodded. If you can get him in the same room as me, I'm game. Uncle scoffed, giving me a cold smirk. I'm still the king. He may have shifted, but I'll put him in the right place if need be. He's hurting, and I'm not going to allow this shit to continue. He's always spoken about that night, but it's obviously affected him far more than he lets on. He wasn't like this when the pack was first formed. We both know growing up and always being around Endora would not make anyone happy. We can at least try, one more time. Yeah, I know I'm ready to listen, but I won't forget what happened to my mate either. Those men and women were given a chance at a new life, but we both can't deny that not all of them were innocent. The worst were thrown in prison. Uncle replied, crossing his arms. Yeah, but there were enough criminals in that pack that remained. I said, frowning. Everyone deserves a second chance. I didn't entirely agree, so I didn't bother replying. Each to their own. He came over and slapped my shoulder. You're a good man, Rayhan. We just need to get through to Leo as RAF would have wanted us to. He said quietly. I smirked slightly, before looking at my sleeping beauty. It's good to hear I've gone from kid to man. I replied. Man. Sienna piped in, giggling before planting a kiss on my cheek. Uncle chuckled dryly before taking her from me. This one looks like an angel, but I swear she's going to become a little demon. He said, tossing her up into the air, making her giggle. That could possibly be literally true, considering her mama's part demon. I replied with a smirk, leaning back on my elbow and kissing Dulsanra's lips, enjoying the sparks that coursed through me. That's a good point. Which demon and werewolf genes are these kids mutating into? I'm getting too confused with all the shit I'm hearing lately. Nothing would surprise me. So there's chances your pups could be hybrids or tribrids, if that shit even exists. Uncle remarked, tossing her up again and making her shriek in excitement. Who knows? I glanced at them, watching her kiss Uncle's cheek before getting all shy. I smiled watching them. It impressed me these pups were not scared of him. I sighed inwardly. Uncle was right, and I knew Dulsanra would agree. I needed to put aside my ego and have this conversation with Leo. No matter how hard it was going to be. I'll take her down, get some rest or some shit. Uncle said, placing Sienna on his shoulders and walking to the door, watching her trying to grab his dangly earring. I smirked watching them. He had to crouch down to get through the door. No matter how trying stuff was, there was a lot that we still had that we were grateful for. Night had fallen, the team had begun to assemble, but some would arrive in the morning. The tension and nerves that were running through the mansion were palpable, even the kids seemed to notice it no matter how subtle we acted about it. Uncle's kids knew we were leaving, and I felt bad for them, considering they hadn't seen their mom in a few days either. Catalia had been terrified that Kiara had been kidnapped. She had gotten so worked up that she had wanted to see Kiara in person, so Uncle had to explain stuff to her, without giving her the full details. We would be leaving around midday tomorrow, hoping to get to the planned location by night. We'd had a meeting earlier on and there would be one final one before we left tomorrow. The final showdown. I still didn't want Mom to come, but she was adamant on going, although her and Uncle's odd behavior was beginning to worry me. I wanted to have a final word with her, really wanting her to change her mind about going. Rayhana had come to check on Dulsanra as she hadn't awoken at all. Mind watching her for a bit? I just want to go have a word with Mom, I said, standing up. She looked up at me and nodded. Sure. She agreed, looking back at Dulsanra. Thanks. I left the room and walked down the hall to Mom's room. I knocked lightly but no answer. I opened the door slowly, peering inside. I was about to call her, when I saw her sitting on a prayer mat, with her legs tucked under her. Her eyes were closed and her hands were raised in front of her in silent prayer. I hadn't seen her like this in a while. Silent tears streamed down her cheeks, and I knew she was so immersed in whatever she was praying for that she hadn't heard me. Now wasn't the right me, I'll talk to her in the morning. I was about to close the door when I sensed someone behind me. Before I could even turn, he spoke. She's going to sacrifice herself, you know. Rayhan. I turned sharply to see Dante standing there. Reaching over, he quietly shut the door. What do you mean she's going to sacrifice herself? I asked sharply. He looked down the hallway before motioning at me to follow him. Why did he act like a 20-year-old rather than his age? This boy, but I was far more worried about what he had just said outside Mom's room. 1,000 thoughts crossed my mind as he opened my bedroom door, making Rayhana look at us questioningly. You can leave, Dante said to her, making her frown. And what are you doing here? She asked. I came to see Dulsanra, he replied haughtily. Walking around the bed, he looked down at her. Side by side, it was clear that the veins on Dulsanra's skin were a lot worse. He bent down and placed a kiss on her forehead, making Rayhana smirk. Ah, the cousins are fighting over a girl, she teased. We aren't. She's mine, I said, crossing my arms. I wanted to ask what he meant, but it was obvious he wasn't planning on telling me until Rayhana was gone. You can go. She stood up and stretched. Sure, keep an eye on her, she said, concern crossing her face. I will. She gave a nod before she left the room. I turned to Dante, who was standing there stroking my kitten's hair. Oi, stop touching her. What did you mean earlier? I asked. He raised an eyebrow before crossing his arms. I meant that Mama Mari is the one who will deliver the final blow to the Jinn, and she will die doing so. What? My head was spinning as I stared at him, trying to collect my emotions and thoughts that were storming through my mind. I don't get it, what do you mean? I said, running my hand through my hair. He frowned seriously, as he looked down at Dulsanra. The price of killing a Jinn. The one who uses the virgin blade will die unless they are of the same kind. Jinns, devils, and demons are all of the same family. Unless you are one, the wielder will die, he said quietly. Does uncle know this? I asked sharply. From what I knew, uncle was going to go in for the final attack. Yes, and so does your mom. She wants to return to Uncle Raphael. He said quietly. His frown was deep, and all traces of craziness were gone. Mom was ready to die. The tension between Uncle and Mom now made sense. For Uncle to agree, Mom must have convinced him somehow. I know as the years have passed, her missing dad and feeling alone has grown. I would see her awake at night, sometimes walking around the mansion gardens. She was always staring off into space, and the amount of time she spent in Dad's favorite spots was unnerving. But had she really come to that point where there was nothing worth living for? Was I being selfish that it stung to know we weren't enough? Was I being selfish to want her to live? Was I wrong for feeling angry that she didn't talk to me about it or about this decision? I looked at Dulsanra lying in the bed. She didn't have the love of her parents, didn't she deserve some more time with Mom? Rayhan. Dante's voice pulled me from my thoughts. I could feel my aura swirling around me, my eyes blazing as that storm within me only continued to grow into something that was getting out of control. Rage began overpowering all sense of logic. How dare they not tell me? Both her and Uncle. I had a right to know. Rayhan. Dante glared at me, and I glared back. Hear me out. What more do you want to say? I growled. Well, nothing if you don't want to hear it. He shot back, frowning at me. I exhaled sharply. Don't test me, Dante, I am annoyed off. I know, and I wouldn't have told you if I didn't have a plan. He stated, walking around the bed. He sat on the other side of the bed, leaning against the headboard as if he owned the thing, but making sure not to disturb Aaron, who was asleep in the center of the bed. Mom had Sienna for the night. What plan? I asked, narrowing my eyes. He looked up at the ceiling, then sighed. You must stop her. I frowned. What? Was he telling me to stop her from going tomorrow? You know, if I stop her, we will still lose someone. It isn't her time yet. She can't go. Although I wanted to ask him what he meant, I knew he wouldn't be able to tell me. From the way he was speaking, it was as if he was telling me the most he could. However, yeah, I agree entirely that she can't go. Explain. Her time has not yet come. Before I explain further, I need you to promise you will do whatever I ask. I raised an eyebrow. You want me to listen to a pup? You might ruin everything. You know this battle is crucial for everyone's sake. He glared at me. I am not a pup. I know it is important, but if you promise me that you will do as I say, then I'll promise you. He turned to look over at Dulsanra, and his eyes filled with sadness before he looked back at me. Then I promise I'll let her go. I will try to get rid of my feelings. Seriously, was he trying to bargain with my own mate? I crossed my arms, frowning. She's my mate, kid. I know, but when I grow up, you know I can steal her. He added arrogantly, making me glare at him, but then his eyes softened. But I'm promising you all I can. Do you think I want to do this? I like her, she's so pretty and kind. He sounded like a child again with a crush on a pretty girl that he knew he'll never have, but I realized what he was trying to do, to show me that he really needed my help. He was giving up the only thing that would work on me by promising me that he'd back off from Dulsanra. She is, I said quietly. He nodded and I felt bad for him. What do you want me to do? You promise to do whatever I ask. I wasn't sure if trusting him blindly was smart, but it was the only option I had right now. If this was the only way to help Mom, then so be it. Fine. I promised, he nodded. Then call Leo on a withheld number because we will need his help. Walt what? Lo? Seriously Dante, he won't listen. He also likes to break rules, he will agree. I will talk to him. Seriously, you two need to grow up, frowned, picking up my phone and holding it out to me. I took it reluctantly. What was he planning? Well, I wouldn't be doing the talking, Leo would hang up before I even managed to say anything. I had his number, but I wasn't sure he had mine because if he did, he would have it blocked. I dialed the number, making sure my caller ID was hidden, and held the phone out to Dante. He took it, putting it on speaker. Aaron stirred but stayed asleep. Who is this? Leo's cold voice came. Get out. He added to someone. I raised my eyebrows when I heard a girl. It's Dante. What do you want, kid? I want you to do something that would annoy Dad off. Will you help me? Silence. Depends. I'm not a fool to promise some shit without even knowing what it is. Well, it's about the mission tomorrow. The thing is, the one who kills the Jinn will die. Yeah, I know, and how did he know that? Did everyone but me know? It didn't help my irritation. Then do you know who is going to do it? Dante asked, watching me. Maria. Leo replied. So, everyone did know. Yes, but the thing is, she can't die. So we need to make a plan. We? Leo asked sharply. Even Dante paused, clearly not having realized what he had just implied. Yeah, us cousins. Leo was silent. I'm not doing this. Leo said after a moment. If Rayhan's there, tell him to go suck. Dante scrunched his nose. I was tempted to tell him to watch his mouth around a kid at least. Please, Dante said quietly. I will owe you a favor in return, anything you wish. That seemed to get him thinking, but I wasn't sure if it was a safe thing to promise. Swear that when I ask for whatever I do, you will not deny me it. Fine. When the UME comes and you ask for a favor, I swear by oath that I will honor whatever you ask for. I swear on. Azura. Dante smiled slightly. I frowned, I didn't get it. He and Azura argued a lot, but he would never make a false oath on her life. Who? Azura, my sweet but annoying aunt, or whatever you wish to call it. My family has been through much for me to swear on them. Dante said, but I could tell from that sly hint of smile that he was up to something. I was actually worried for Azura at this point. He never called Azura sweet, what was he up to? Fine, whatever, but I will hold you to that, even if it's years from now, Dante. An alpha always honors his words. I know. So will you help? Fine. Good. It involves Rayhan. Can we somehow have him kill the Jinn and die in the process? I wouldn't mind that. I frowned, but Dante sighed. No, because Dulsanra needs him. He replied. Wow, was that my worth? At least you acknowledge she needs me. I remarked sarcastically. I glared at Dante, who simply smirked. You know, if he's out of the picture, you get to keep her. Leo implied. That's true, Dante agreed arrogantly. Can you two cut it out? I growled. So he is there? Leo said coldly. Yes, because I need you both to do this together. I can't explain it fully, but I really need you both to pay attention. Dante said, closing his eyes. We both stayed quiet, and I knew whatever Dante was going to ask for would probably impact Leo's final stance on this. I knew that there was no way I could stop Mom, and I was holding on to whatever Dante had planned because, like he said, it was not Mom's time to go yet. I knew it was selfish, but I couldn't lose her. Mama Maria, or Dad, will be carrying the blade. I don't know, but when you see Mama Maria going for the Jinn, I need you both to work together to get the blade from her. Leo, I think it will have to be you, because Rayhan won't be able to risk hurting her. I don't get why her dying is a problem. Leo added, making my eyes flash. Listen to me. Dante said. I could tell he was feeling exhausted already. He may act alright but he was weak. You need to pass the dagger to Rayhan by all means necessary. Rayhan, you will need to stop Dad, he's weakened due to the poison, you can take him. That's fine, but then what? I asked. I heard Leo scoff. What? Can't you go and kill the Jinn yourself? No. The one who will kill the Jinn will be there. Dante said. Who? I asked. It was inevitable someone was going to die. I can't say, but at the last moment, when all hope will feel like it's lost, he will come and you will know he is the one to do it. Trust your instincts and give him the dagger. We both fell silent, letting Dante's words sink in. It all sounded fine, but this was messed up on an entire new level. Not only was I listening to a smart, all-knowing pup, but to work alongside the one man who hated me more than anything, and above that, telling me to give the dagger to someone who I didn't even know by following my instincts? This could go wrong on so many levels. You both just need to do exactly as I said, no matter who tries to stop you. Look for the man in black, you must get him the dagger. Won't he die? I asked quietly. Or worse yet, what if this misses? Leo added. He won't. Do you both promise? Dante pushed. Fine. I said. It was obvious Dante knew what he was going on about, but his promise regarding Del and the way he knew what was happening made me think this plan would work fine, but I don't care what happens to him who's there with you. I'll give him the dagger, then I'm done. Leo said icily. Thank you. Dante replied with a small smile. Goodbye, Leo. Leo hung up without saying anything else, and I looked at Dante, who was now looking at Dulsanra and Aaron. Are we doing the right thing? I asked. You know messing this up could cost us a lot, I know, but it won't get messed up. I mean you two won't, you can do it. Our eyes met, and I sighed. I would put my faith in him, because I really had no other option. Then tomorrow the day has come, Dante sighed, leaning back as he began playing with Aaron's hair, yet I replied. We both stayed silent, the weight of the upcoming battle weighing heavily on our minds. This plan could help save a life or destroy thousands more. It was a double-edged blade, and I was siding with the one that was risking far more, on the words of a powerful child, and with my only ally being the one man who hated me more than anything. How badly could things go wrong? Alejandro, the meeting was over, we would be leaving soon. Everything was finally in place. I had given the men of my pack half an hour to say goodbye to their families, because although I would do my best to make sure the losses were minimum, there would still be losses. You aren't well, Alpha, are you sure you should be leading? Carmen said quietly as we walked towards the cells. I cast her a cold glare. I'm fine, go do whatever you need to. I commanded coldly. I am the king, and I plan to lead my men regardless of my health. She lowered her head and walked out, leaving me alone to head down to where my queen was bound. Sure, I was in pain and the bouts of coughing up blood were growing, but I was still strong. My stomach twisted the closer I got to where Kiara was locked up. Taking a deep breath, I unlocked the door, then walked down and through to the end cell. She lay on a slab of silver, chained to it. She was also hooked up to a machine that was keeping her unconscious via a drip. Her face was pale, and she looked like she had lost some weight. Amor mio! I picked up her slender hand, which was restrained by cuffs, bending down and kissing it softly. The strong sparks danced between us before I placed her hand back down gently. I won't able to bid her farewell or tell her I got this shit under control because it could alert him. I love you, I swear we will destroy him and send him back to hell once and for all. I stroked her hair, frowning deeply. Was I doing the right thing by letting Maria do this? I know she was adamant, but I really needed to be sure. I didn't like this, not one bit. Dulsanra, Dante, you. I'm going to fix this. Wait for me because I will be back. No one messes with my family and lives. Leaning down, I threaded my fingers through her hair and kissed her lips. Hold on. I forced myself back and looked down at her for a final time, as if wanting to etch this moment into my mind. I hoped that with his death, her memories returned. I turned away, not wanting to linger for longer than normal or make the Jinn suspicious if he was somehow awake. I glanced at my watch. I had 20 minutes to meet the kids and get ready. I had gotten changed and had just gone to see Del, who was unconscious still, only to find Maria was there too. She was already dressed, ready for the mission. You can still change your mind, I said quietly. She shook her head. My mind is made up and I cannot wait to see him again, she said, smiling at me, with the glimmer of hope in her eyes. My heart squeezed and I nodded. She wanted this. Say hi to him for me then, I said quietly. I hope he's proud. I know I'm not even half the man he was, but I'll carry on trying. She nodded, her eyes glittering with unshed tears. I quickly bent down, giving Dulsanra a kiss on the forehead before leaving the room. I hated goodbyes. Leo's come, Al. Darien said through the link, making me frown. I thought he was going to meet us on the way. He said he couldn't bother waiting. Shall I let him into the mansion? Yeah, Raven and Rayhana are with the kids in the lounge. He won't try anything. Got it. I cut the link and headed downstairs myself. Entering the lounge, Dante looked at me as two of the Westwood Five sat next to him. He played a game on the tablet, with them watching with rapt attention. Raven was carrying Tatum and Sienna as she sang some weird shit to them. Aaron and her other three were playing on the floor. One thing I had to admit was she sure knew how to look after multiple kids. Where's Ri? I asked Raven. She went to say goodbye to Chris. Raven said, her own eyes filled with concern. I nodded, frowning, and Liam? I asked. In the garden, watching the girls. I nodded and turned to Dante. I'm leaving soon, I said to him. I know, he said, looking up at me. I nodded, crouching down by the Westwood Three and Aaron, who were busy playing with blocks. I ruffled their hair for a moment before I stood up. Aaron grabbed onto my leg, staring up at me. Bye-bye, he said, with a cute wave. I smirked. Rather impatient to get rid of me, aren't you, pup? He simply toddled off, so I went over to Dante, sitting on the other side of Theo. We shouldn't be too long, take care of all them. I don't know if your aunt will be able to cope alone, I said, looking at Raven. Oh, I'll manage, don't worry, Raven replied with a smile, just as Elijah entered with Scarlet, who was also ready to leave. I'll go meet the girls. Yeah, and bring Leo back, Elijah remarked, shaking his head, and I wondered what he meant. I hope he wasn't ruffling Dante's hair and earning a frown from him. I stood up. He was going to be okay, he was a demigod. I looked at him, but it was still hard to get my head wrapped around it. He looked at me, the hint of a faint smile crossing his lips. Want to say something? Nah, just stay strong, I said quietly. I don't give a shit if he's a demigod or not, he's still my pup. He nodded, giving me a smile. I will, Dad. Scarlet, can you get Rayhan out front? I don't want him and Leo to cross paths. I don't have time to deal with that shit. She nodded, kissing Elijah a final time before she left the room. I'll go meet the girls, then I'll be heading out too, I said, leaving the room. I reached the open doors, stopping in my tracks. Liam was standing there looking worried. I moved a brow, stepping out into the sunshine to see Katalia and Skyla standing there watching Azura, who was supporting a rather red forehead and staring challengingly at Leo, who was sitting on the steps. His legs sprawled out in front of him and I could sense his aura. Again, she said, crossing her arms. Leo raised an eyebrow, picking up the ball and bouncing it off her head. She didn't even flinch, instead catching the ball and throwing it back at him. Again. She was doing that weird shit again. Leo frowned, clearly wondering what the Westwood Devil's angle was. "You're weird," he said coldly, tossing the ball at her forehead again. Liam looked relieved to see me, whilst Catalia was clearly worried, and Skyla was obviously enjoying it. "Again," she said, unblinking as she stared at Leo. "This kid's psychotic," Leo remarked, glancing at me as he hit her forehead with the ball again. "Again," Azura said, making Leo frown. "Nah, I'm bored," he said, tossing the ball to the ground and letting it roll away. "Cut this shit out," I warned. Azura watched him for a moment, before she ran after the rolling ball. Leo started it. Skyla chimed in, frowning at him. "Yeah, once. She's the one who told me to hit her again." Leo shot back, taking his lighter from his pocket. Liam sighed. "Azura is just a weirdo," Leo finished, pulling out a cigarette. "I thought you weren't going to come here?" I asked, crossing my arms as Azura returned with the ball, looking as normal as ever, as if she hadn't just had a ball bounced off her forehead several times. She stopped a foot behind him, and despite her casual expression, I had a feeling she was going to try something. I changed my mind. I was bored waiting around. He shrugged, but just as he was about to light the cigarette, Azura slammed the ball at the back of his head, knocking the cigarette from between his lips. He growled menacingly, turning as fast as lightning. Catalia gasped in horror, Liam muttered a swear, and Skyla cackled. As for the devil herself, she simply stared at the glaring man despite her heart pounding. What was that?" Leo hissed. I was by his side in seconds. Although I knew he wouldn't hurt her, I wasn't going to risk it. "What the was what?" She glared back. Okay, she was obviously really annoyed off. The young alpha wolf's eyes flashed, his powerful aura emanating off him. "The actual? You psychotic," Leo started. "Stupid person. Leo did that to Azura first, Daddy," Skyla added defensively, as Liam scooped his sister up into his arms protectively. "Put me down," Azura snapped. "Come on Zuzu, calm down." Liam tried to soothe her. "No. He hit me first," she shouted. "But weren't you saying again, again?" Liam tried to calm the struggling girl who was kicking wildly in his arms. "I don't care. Give me the ball," she shouted. Leo stood up, glaring at the screaming girl before I placed my hand on his shoulder firmly. "She's a kid, are you seriously going to start a fight? Why were you using her as a target?" I asked, pulling him back. He shrugged me off roughly, his eyes blazing a steely blue. "She's a maniac," he growled. "You're the maniac," Azura shouted, glaring at him murderously. "Get out of my sight, or I will poke your eyes out and cook them." "Be Azura." Liam tried to stop her. "Oh yeah?" Leo growled. "Yeah." Azura taunted, her bright blue eyes dazzling with anger as she glared at him. "Oh for sake, can you two cut out?" Liam, let's go," I growled, bending down next to my own girls. "Sky, why are you enjoying this, She shrugged, pondering over something thoughtfully. I don't know, it was funny. Daddy, can you pay me for every time Leo swears too? She asked hopefully. 5. What was this girl so deprived of that she needed so much money? No, I answered, not missing Catalia's small smile. I pulled them both into my arms and planted a kiss on both of their heads. They may be weirdos, but they are my weirdos. I'm going to head out, we're going to make everything okay again. I want you two to be good girls, alright? Okay, Daddy. Catalia whispered, fear filling her eyes. I looked into her eyes. I promise you, he won't be able to hurt anyone ever again. She nodded before giving me a one-armed tight hug. That teddy she always carried around held Taiwi in her other arm. All right, let's get going, I said, standing up and looking over at the other three. Liam was still holding onto Azura tightly. She was looking at Leo with distaste, something he was now finding amusing. I hope you get hurt, she said to Leo. Yeah, and I hope you walk off a chill. He shot back, smoking his cigarette. I threatened. Let's go. Marcel was right, his aura was very powerful, and I was curious to see what his wolf's true capacity was. Take care of yourself, kid, I said to Azura, about to ruffle her hair, but the look of pure rage on her face made me decide I'd rather want to keep my hand intact before her piranha side came out and she bit it off. I swear that pup was rabid. Love you, Zuzu, I heard Liam say before I glanced back at the twins. Two both were watching me, and I gave them a small smile. Everything would be okay. The team was assembled. Everyone was somber and serious. They had all bid farewell to their families and mates. I had seen Liam say goodbye to his kids and mate, Scarlett and Elijah. Chris saying goodbye to Rayhana and Tatum. Maria meeting everyone one final time. The chances of lives being lost were high, but I hoped the losses were minimal. For our packs, for our families, for what's right, we will see this mission through. We should get there by nightfall. Remember to stick together, and protect your allies. We will come out victorious, I said loudly, knowing that every werewolf or witch present could hear me clearly. A roar of approval rippled through the crowds. For victory! Everyone followed suit, and I gave a curt nod. They knew their jobs, the rules, and their orders. I knew they would carry them out accordingly. Darien had the blade, one he would pass to Maria at the right time. He didn't know that the wielder would die. I had told him that she would be carrying out the final attack, but we had kept the vital points of the mission secret. The Jinn would be expecting me, and I planned to be the decoy. I just hoped Rayhan forgave me for not telling him. A sharp wind blew through the crowds as I looked into the eyes of the men and women warriors. I kept my emotions bidden, only showing confidence and power. It gave them the courage they needed, and with it my own resolve only strengthened. We were going to succeed. 100%. All right, let's get done, I growled before I shifted and broke into a run, the rest following my lead. The time to kill him was finally here. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.